trade show room. You don't have to stop what you're doing. You don't even have to come sit here. But just by show of hands, who is a mom in the room? Wherever you are, lift your hand up if you're a mom. And put your hand down. Now, somewhere in the room, if you have ever encountered some kind of adversity in your life, lift up your hand, big or small. And if you're a mom, and if you've encountered some kind of adversity in your life, and I know you're an entrepreneur because you're at this conference, if you believe that somewhere in that mix of becoming a mother and overcoming some kind of adversity, that has helped you become a stronger entrepreneur, then you should come and sit here. Okay. My name's Christine McLeod, and I'm really honored to be here at Mom Inc. And really what I wanted to start with is say, this is just my story. And I think there's 700 women here today, and probably just from the show of hands, there's at least half of the people that are in this conference that could be standing up and sharing their story, which might be different in subject, but probably similar in theme. So I just want to honor all of the moms that are here, because I think the power of story and your story is so important when you're thinking about your business and the life that you're trying to create. So this is just a little bit about my story, and I would love to connect with anybody after and hear their story as well. So a little bit about me. I'm Chief Possibilities Officer, nominated this year for a Top 40 Under 40 award. I've written some ebooks, I do a lot of speaking and training, but more than anything, I believe that management and leadership in Canada and the world is broken. How we lead our people, how we talk about employee experience in corporate, I believe is broken. 68% of the people in the workplace today are totally disengaged or apathetic about their work. And there's no disconnect there between the number of people flocking to entrepreneurial lifestyles and women flocking to entrepreneurial lifestyles and that statistic. And so one of the other things that I do is I actually lead this conference, which I co-founded last year, which is called Impact 99, and the vision is to ignite a different kind of workplace. So we bring together senior business leaders and senior HR leaders from some of the top companies in Canada, and we talk about social and digital technology, we talk about employee experience, and we talk about how to reinvent the workplace. That's one of the things that I do. I also, as an entrepreneur, from day one of starting my company 3 years ago, believe that working with impact and living with impact are not separate. And so from day one, even before I paid myself a penny, I really had this belief that we have an opportunity as women to change the world. And I can't do that in massive, I'm no Bill Gates Foundation, but right from the beginning, starting from a mindset of giving back where you live is not about getting to a certain level of income or a certain level of success, but whatever it is you have, it's married all together and blended. That right from day one, we can conduct ourselves in a certain way that brings out the best in others. So very proud to be part of a global group of entrepreneurs that have partnered to say, we're going to give 3% of our revenue to make an impact in the world. And those two organizations, Playground Builders and BC Children's, at this point, are the organizations that I've chosen. But I have other hats as well. I'm the wife of the most amazing patient guy in the world. Oops, can't skip that slide. And I'm the mom to two of the most amazing little people in the world who are 4 and 6 years old. So all of those different hats that I wear as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, as a wife, and as a mom, not to mention daughter and everything else that goes along, that's all part of this story. And lastly, I live in a place called Squamish, BC, just up the highway, 16,000 people, which is the most amazing community to live in and the most amazing community of giving, thoughtful, entrepreneurial women who are incredibly connected and incredibly passionate about creating and designing the kind of life and work with impact. So it's an amazing community for entrepreneurs. And the interesting thing about all of those slides that I've just showed you, which is I have a pretty amazing life, and I get to do some incredible things. But all of those things, except for the slide of my husband, because he existed before this, but everything else stems from something that happened on March 26th. And I wanted to share with you because there's 2 dates that are really foundational in terms of where I am today. And really what I'm hoping to for you to get out of this is understanding that our story matters. It matters in everything that we do. So here's what happened on March 26th. When we got pregnant with our first child, I sort of had this vision in my life of I'm going to be married and then I'm going to get pregnant, and literally it sort of was like clockwork. My husband walked by me, I got pregnant the first time, exactly when I wanted, I had a spring baby, exactly what I wanted. And that whole idea of kind of designing this life, and sometimes as women we like to control things a little bit and say, oh, this is first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to quit, then I'm going to get pregnant, then I'm going to have my children 2 years apart, and we sort of have this false sense that we can control things. So on March 26th, I went into labor, and we were in Sechelt at the cabin, and I was 3 weeks early, so it was not where I was meant to give birth. I was meant to give birth at Lionsgate. And so my water broke at, I don't know, it was like 6:40 in the morning, and it's your first, so you're like not sure what you're supposed to do. So I phoned the hospital, I'm like, should I come in? I'm in Sechelt, I don't want to deliver in Sechelt. Like, there's a ferry leaving in like an hour. Do I need to be on that ferry? No, it's your first. Like, don't worry about it, take the next ferry, you got lots of time. But my husband's kind of timing the contractions, and we're sitting there going, yeah, you know what, these are really fast. Maybe we have like 5 minutes to decide, so we decided to take that ferry. So note to self, for anybody who's in labor trying to take a ferry, they actually have a policy of not letting pregnant or laboring women on the ferry. So we got there and said, okay, my wife's in labor, can we get on the ferry? Can we get on first? And they're like, oh, no, you can't get on the ferry. I'm like, I need to be on this ferry. So we actually ended up getting on the ferry because there was an ambulance that happened to be in the area, and they followed us behind my car and sat with me so that if I got sort of to the other side and things were progressing faster, they could take me by ambulance to Lionsgate. So everything's going really well. And the long and the short of it is, for what I hear for a first labor, is after 8 hours, pretty textbook, a little bit difficult pushing at the end, is we gave birth to our first little girl. And every one of you, this is such a cool audience, because everyone, well, maybe except for you, you're not a mom, but every single one of you, and you're not a mom, but every single one of you is a mom. And when I describe that feeling of holding your first child for the first time in that instant, and that moment where you understand that the universe is like someone lifts the curtain and there's something else that's going on that's way bigger than what it is that you thought everything was about, that there starts to be something really incredible that happens in an instant. And that's what happened with us, is we're holding this amazing little 7.5-pound baby girl. So that was really incredible. And the other thing that happened too is I all of a sudden had this overwhelming gratefulness to my mom. I don't know if you guys ever did that. And I felt like I needed to apologize to her all of a sudden. And then the lemons rained down. So within a couple of hours, so we gave birth to Caitlin, and because things were a little bit tricky at the end, she ended up going into special care nursery. This is not our daughter, but it was the closest I could find to what we were looking at when we saw our daughter. Without any explanation, probably about 2 hours after she was born, all of a sudden, her heart rate crashed and she had a seizure. And they automatically thought it was her heart. And so you can imagine, all hell broke loose in ICU. There's a million doctors. Everybody that is anywhere is basically taken ICU. And all of a sudden, you've got like 20 people working on this little 7.5-pound baby. And what happened for the next 10 hours is that every 20 minutes, she kept seizing. And every 20 minutes, her heart rate kept crashing. And they would revive her. They would give her a shot of epinephrine. And they were trying so desperately to figure out what it was that was wrong. And they couldn't. And BC Children's came, and the neonatal team came, and they came as fast as they could, and they would stabilize her, and they would put her onto the transport, and then she'd crash again, and they'd have to take her off. And this went on, and finally they got her to Children's. And by this time, this is the middle of the night. And we're talking to teams that are at BC Children's, and they're telling us at this point, we have no idea what's wrong, but we cannot believe how strong your daughter is. This little baby girl who is seizing every 20 minutes and whose heart rate is crashing, like, we just can't believe that this is continuing on. But as far as we know at this point, you're dealing with a baby who's very, very sick. She wasn't sick when she was born, but she is really sick now. And you might be dealing, if she makes it through the night, you might be dealing with a child who's got severe brain damage. And you're sitting there in your bed and you're just making deals with the devil, saying, we can deal with it, whatever it is, just let her make it through the night. And she didn't. She made it till about 3 in the morning, so less than 12 hours after she was born. And so you can imagine, because you're moms, of all of a sudden sitting in this place and knowing that you're facing the biggest challenge that you've ever faced in your life. And with everything else that's going on, all of a sudden, this is a new reality for you. Something in hindsight, when they did after several months, after they did test after test, because in this day and age, when babies are born, sometimes we know ahead of time that babies are sick. We know in utero that they're sick. We can prepare for it. Or else when you give birth to a baby, they're really sick right away, and you just know. But it's very rare in this day and age that a baby's born totally healthy, and then all of a sudden crashes. And what it was is basically something in all of her millions of metabolic systems that we have, one tiny little thing, which they still don't know what it was glitchy, and had this butterfly sort of effect of maximizing and amplifying. And I didn't know this, but when babies are in your tummy, they work off your metabolism, and within a couple hours, they kick into their own. And something in her own metabolism, so small and so invisible, amplified to the place that it was catastrophic. So here I was, in 24 hours, having lived 2 of the most transformational experiences I think that you could possibly have. Giving birth to your first child, and losing a child. And going home from the hospital on maternity leave with all my friends who had just had babies at the same time, but with no baby. So, needless to say, I think I was at a crossroads. And for anybody who's faced any kind of huge adversity, and it doesn't have to be the loss of a child, it could be a divorce, it could be an accident, it could be something really, really major that happens in your life, you know what I mean when you feel like you're in that place. And the reality is you have people all around you who say, you're so strong, I don't know how you do this, I can't imagine. And the reality is you only have 2 choices. One of the roads is you check out. That's it, I'm done. I can't deal with it, I can't go anywhere, I cannot deal with this. And that is an option. And the other road, which may not be pretty, it's not a road that you planned, but it's to move forward. And you don't know how you're going to move forward, and you don't know with who, but you know it's the only other choice. And so faced with that, I knew that checking out wasn't an option for me. And at the time, it didn't feel like I wanted to do it for me. It felt like I wanted to do it to honor this little person who really wasn't with us for very long, but I felt like I owed it to Caitlin. And so that road that I chose, with the amazing support that we have around us, really and foundationally is the beginning of where I am today. And on that road, there was a whole bunch of different emotions that came with it. But one of the things, as much as I would trade anything in the entire world to have my daughter here with me, one of the gifts that I had was actually being able to take the first part of my mat leave, so 12 weeks, and I didn't have any responsibility to anyone. I didn't have to be anywhere, I didn't have to do anything, and I had 12 weeks to pause for the first time in my life and really examine a whole bunch of things about me, about where I wanted to go, what was meaningful to me, what was no longer meaningful to me, and what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so when I talked about kind of this talk, I really talked about these 5 core truths for me that through this adversity, these 2 situations that I'm going to talk about, 5 core truths for me that really are the way that I lead my life today and the way that I run my business. And 3 of these truths for me came clear in those 12 weeks on my mat leave. I did a ton of yoga every day. I spent a lot of time with people I cared about. I was absolutely blown away by how many people that I didn't even know had been touched by our experience. people who had had similar experiences elsewhere in the world through my network and someone else's network that had reached out to me. And through all of these people in this shared experience, one of the things that I realized is that we are all part of an ecosystem. We are an ecosystem in life, in our network, and I have to say, especially as women, you never know what connection is going to end up being part of that ecosystem. It has nothing to do with your title and what you have on your business card. It's shared experience. It's something that you go through that someone else learns about, or someone else wants to be a part of, or someone else touches. And so that ecosystem for me was so clear in that period of my life, and it became something that I realized I was part of, that I would always be part of, and was just more in my conscious. And the second is just raise your hand if you're familiar with the butterfly effect. So the theory with the butterfly effect is that the tiny flap of one butterfly's wings in South America can amplify in the atmosphere over and over again, and down the line, a couple months later, potentially cause a tornado in Asia. So it's the idea that this tiny little movement, and I understood it in the context of what happened to my daughter, because something so small amplified so catastrophically, but I also understood it in the power of business and human connection, that one tiny action, one tiny thing that you do can amplify, and you have no idea down the line the impact that it can have. The second is this idea of pausing. We are so busy in our lives. We are so busy as moms. We are so busy as wives. We are so busy as entrepreneurs, and we don't take the time to pause. And when you pause, and it's the same thing they say about sleeping, that's when your body actually recovers the most and learns the most. When we pause, when we turn off the cell phone, when we find the place in our life where we can go for a walk and we stop everything else, is when we actually get the most clear. So that, for me in business, was something that I really, really learned in those 12 weeks. And then leap. When you pause and you slow down and then you leap, you're much clearer about what it is that you want to do and what you don't. And the third is this idea of human connection. It's from that moment in that period, I'd always been someone who was really, really extroverted and someone really connected, but that authentic humanity, that idea of human connection and how intertwined we are in the world, that is something that I knew from there on forward when I went back to business was something I would take with me. And then there was this idea of odds, because I really, really knew that I was meant to be a mom. And I knew, I had really had this vision of holding this baby girl, and I knew it wasn't Caitlin. And so I knew that I was gonna have other children. But you can imagine, I'm sitting there going, we don't know what happened, is it 1 in a million? And really, if it was something that was genetic, which a metabolic disorder is, the odds of it happening again were 1 in 4. 1 in 4 for every future pregnancy, not just the next one. So just the fact that I even thought about getting pregnant again kind of shows something about, as women, in terms of adversity, is what you know about yourself when the potential reward is bigger than what the risk is. So the fact that I even tried to get pregnant again, and the fact that in that brief moment of time, what I knew and experienced was so big that I knew that I wanted to try again. Can't really see the one on the left, but those are the odds. So in 2006, Nicole was born. In 2008, Allie was born. And so the odds were amazing. We got really lucky. And that's something, again, that really shifted the next step. And so through this experience of having these 3 little girls, all of a sudden a shift was taking place for me. I was in the corporate world. I had an amazing job. And yet this idea of impact and a bigger contribution was really taking shape for me. And I was feeling in corporate with all of these different layers of management that I wasn't having the impact that I wanted to have. And so all of a sudden, I saw this shift happening. And instead, after my mat leave with Nicole, instead of going back to corporate, I actually shifted to a startup company, this amazing luxury boutique hotel management company. So it was kind of like being an entrepreneur, but I was an intrapreneur because I was doing it with someone else's money. And I spent 18 months in this amazing company, and we really had this vision of changing kind of the world of luxury boutique hotels and customer service and the kind of company we wanted to do. It was amazing. And then on June 6th, in 2009, when I was on mat leave with Allie, the lemons came again. God damn it, those lemons. And so I'm sitting in the ferry lineup about to go on a girls' weekend with my mother-in-law and my sister-in-laws. And I get this phone call from the CEO who says, you know what, Christine, things are going really crappy. The company's just experienced, we've had huge growth, we've opened 8 hotels, but things are just not where they need, and I don't have a job for you when you come back from mat leave. Okay? And then within a couple of months, there actually was no company. And so not only I'm on mat leave and I don't have a job to go back to, but they had no money to pay me my severance. And I'm on mat leave, I'm on EI, so when you're on EI, you actually can't then finish your mat leave and go on EI again because you don't have enough hours. So now all of a sudden I'm staring down the pipe of November 2009 with not a penny of income coming in. And so that was the lemons. And that's where all of a sudden I realized, you know what? I've gone from corporate, I've gone to entrepreneur, I can do this. I don't know how, I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I know that for my girls and for the kind of life that I wanna live, I need to control my own destiny. And for me, it was at that point when I always thought I might own my own company one day, but at that point I realized I kind of gotta give it a try. And so I took the leap. And it didn't happen one day of just going, I'm going to build this amazing company. It was all these little conversations of people in my network and people saying, what am I good at and what could I do? And really it came back to this vision of believing that sometimes the road that you make is the best one. And I knew that there was a different way of leading and a different way of managing people. And I knew that management and leadership in Canada was broken, and I didn't know how, but I knew that somehow I had the opportunity to fix that. And so the fourth thing I realized there, the fourth truth, is if you read, and I'll send you these slides, or I can send them to Christine or whoever so you can see it. It's hard to see with the light. But as you realized at that point, is that embracing your dreams and then taking the leap to make it happen, at the core of it is what an entrepreneur is about. And so that belief, that's something different. Not everyone's wired that way. But it doesn't matter what company you are, how small or how big is an entrepreneur, there's something in there that you know that you can make an impact. And where it ends, and my fifth core truth, is this idea of working with impact and living with impact. And when you come from your true self, when you come from your core values, and you realize all of a sudden that all these other people, I know in this room, this may not be my target audience, I know in this room there are women that I will leave here more connected to after this, through this day, that may or may not be in some case someone I work with, but there's someone I'm gonna feel connected with. Because that authenticity and that sort of vulnerability of putting your story out there ends up then attracting other people who feel in some way that connected with something they did. And that shared experience and that learning from each other as women, I think, is so much of how we learn. And when we talked earlier about women and sometimes it's competitive with them, we need to do away with that. Because as women, we have so much potential to impact the world, and we have an ability to learn from each other and to each help each other succeed. So that idea of working with impact then leads to living with impact. And that idea of this juggling of your work and your life and your personal, there is no juggling. Juggling is a sense of imbalance. Grabbing onto those balls and understanding that it's blended. Your life and your work, and it doesn't matter if you're making t-shirts or you're coaching or whatever it is, as an entrepreneur, they're blended. And when I look at my daughter, who's 5, or who's 6 now, and her classroom making pictures for kids in the Middle East, for playground builders, and this is my friend Kirby, who's on the board, and then Kirby bringing those pictures to the Middle East, and then taking pictures of those 5-year-old kids in the Middle East, and bringing them back to my daughter and her class, and having her understand at 6 years old that she has impact. And so for me, both of those things, that living and that working with impact, all of that and everything else that I'm building, it all comes back from those 2 days and those 2 experiences in my life that really are now dictating how I live my entire life. So these are the 5 truths for me of how I live and how I work. Create your ecosystem, find your tribe, build your tribe, go out and be true to what it is that's important to you, and other people will find you. Pause. Pause frequently, once a quarter, once a week, once a day for a minute. Take the time to disconnect and pause and really get back to where it is that you want. That human connection, that's what it's all about. Lose the fakeness, lose the sort of public you, lose the idea of kind of on stage. Just be who you are in all its imperfections. Embrace a vision. What is your vision for the world? What do you want for your children? What is it that you want for your daughters and your son? What is it that you want for your brothers and your sister? What is it that you want for humanity? And what is it that your potential small little contribution to that is? Have that vision and then constantly course correct to know if you're on that. And the last is living and working with impact. And whatever business it is that you do, it happens, that's in the name of my company, but whatever it is that you do, I believe we can all do that. I just wanted to dedicate that to my daughters, Nicole and Allie. Thank you.